Okay, so hello, I'll introduce myself again. So I'm Fiona, Engineering Manager at 9fin and moderator of our panel here today. So we've heard a lot from our speakers across the conference today on moving our AI systems from POC and into production. And this is what we're really going to focus on in this panel, is what it really takes to implement and scale agentic systems into production and to provide business value. So thankfully, I've got two experts sitting up here with me on the stage. So we've got Browne and Krzysztof. And they bring with them a wealth of experience from creating chatbots that drive business value to building agentic systems that are safe and reliable in production. So welcome, Browne and Krzysztof. How about we start off with some introductions from yourselves?
Hi, I'm Krzysztof Suchomski. So I was starting in data before big data was even a word, and we were sorting data with Perl. So it's thing looks like a Stone Age by now. I worked on a lot of data-intensive applications that cross like finance, healthcare, retail. Spent a few years in Nike working on machine learning, MLOps operations. And right now I'm building or leading our practice to build our technical skills in data and AI.
Hi, I'm Browne, Cleland, VP of AI with Congruity 360 here in Belfast. I've been with Congruity about 3 years now. Our main focus has largely been on analyzing unstructured data, detecting risk for compliance and governance purposes. More recently, we're working with agentic systems and chatbots to improve the user experience and also automate a lot of the sort of more painful and challenging aspects of data governance.
Brilliant, thank you. So before we jump into our questions, let's see if we can take a step back to first principles here and see if we can align on firstly, what exactly is an AI agent? And I know we touched on this with Michaela's panel this morning on beyond the hype. So maybe start with yourself, Browne.
Yeah, I actually really like Donica's definition of an LLM with a credit card. I thought that was great because it captures the idea of autonomy that we associate with agents. And also touches on the idea that these things can be very expensive potentially. But there are a lot of different perceptions and understandings of what agentic means. I personally am quite fond of the Hugging Face definition. They have arranged the capabilities on a spectrum. So starting with what they call a router, so that's an agent that can determine its own workflow, and then looking at tool use, multi-step agents, and then eventually multi-agent systems. So I like that because it's useful to get everybody on the same page in terms of what we mean when we talk about agents, but also we can measure our own capabilities in terms of, maturity levels and see where we want to go with these things.
I'm using typically like slightly different definition, like using 2 dimensions to describe like agency levels and impact on the outside world. And it gives a little bit of a framework to understand what is necessary to actually get there. Yeah. So you have right now, agent is anything from AI assistant, so task augmentation, how we improve our efficiency. Then you have like AI workflows, where you have like more of an automation of the task. Currently, they show up like use cases for truly agentic systems, which like, deep research agent is, for example, a good use case where you say, give me market analysis and it goes and do it. But then the impact gives you like additional level of it. Yeah, I was speaking read-only use cases. So that's like your entry level where you are more focused on evaluations, ensuring this is like working consistently. if you will move into like a right modes, like field assistance, where we were like implementing systems that are helping people to drive efficiency, but this is actually working as in a right mode, like security requirements will grow exponentially to actually ensure that. And the next level is making decisions. If you are like passing like even parts of like decision making to models, it's becoming much more complex to operate in production, and even more critical to have like, you know, rock solid AI ops implemented. So it's like two dimensions that gives you like a little bit of thinking around what is needed to get to production. And I think we are at the stage where workflows and right modes are actually something that many companies started to implement. But there's like a whole frontier of solutions that will either like start with like small isolated decision making, and also like more of an agency, like where you achieve like, you know, real goals, not like, you know, just a small task automation.
Great. And with agentic systems, coming back to yourself, Krzysztof, there's a lot of excitement around these systems. But how do you actually go about in selecting a use case to actually implement, and really one that drives value and impact?
I think few people are already touched on that, yeah, like, you know, so all the ways of working with product thinking, value mapping, focusing on the problem, and being user-centric is still valid. Like it's really about like what the problem is. We are very often running AI Launchpad workshops where we are helping organizations with showing them the art of the possible, and then ideating of on the solutions. And in many times, it's actually not AI problem. You can like, you know, solve it in a much simpler way. So you need to start with the problem itself. If this is an AI problem, then we are just extending this with additional frameworks. So Tom was saying about like AI framework that he's creating, but we have also responsible AI ethics framework where we have additional dimensions to check not only if we are building the right thing, but in the right way. So there's like a levels of mitigations. We are also doing more of a harms workshops, identifying the risks associated with a specific AI solution, and then like deciding on the mitigations. So I think it's more about like enrichment of like, you know, the practices like product thinking with this AI context to get into like, you know, a really robust solution for the problem.
Do you have anything to add, Brian, on selection?
Yeah, I think Krzysztof's given a very comprehensive answer. I suppose for us, what we found was building relationships with the internal stakeholders. As an engineering team, we're sometimes a little bit distant from the customer, but if we talk to people in product and sales, they can help us give a better understanding what the problems are. Obviously, we want to identify, you know, things that are real pain points where there's a real opportunity to deliver business value. And then because we are still relatively early in terms of our journey, in terms of building agentic systems, we've been looking for quick wins, if you like, so narrowly scoped problems where we can deliver value in a short space of time. And we're going on the basis that we think demand for these agentic systems is going to continue to grow in future. We need to build out our internal capability, get our experience built up so we can build more ambitious solutions in future.
Super. So, Brian, you have identified the use case, and you've gone off and you've built your AI agentic system. How do you go about evaluating that then? And have you seen the metrics differ or change compared to the metrics that we use for, let's call it, traditional software systems?
Yeah, so I think every problem has its own set of metrics attached to it. So again, that's why it's important to have good engagement, early engagement with the stakeholders and end users if possible, to understand what their measures of success are, so we can turn those into metrics that we can then start to capture in our eval frameworks. And then from a technical point of view, it's been a learning curve for us. There's a lot of things to this, building agents that are quite new to us. So what we found is there's a lot of, there's sort of an explosion of discussion around how you evaluate these systems. And there are a lot of useful materials out there. Some of the things we've found useful is building our own bespoke evaluation frameworks, test harnesses, and so on. Making it as easy as possible for end users to give feedback, because that feedback is essential for us to improve the system. You want to make that as painless and as effortless as possible, ensuring that you've got good detailed traces from the systems as they run, so you can identify where the errors are happening, and then things like error analysis and visualizing funnel charts and transition matrices and things like that. So there's a lot to learn, but as I said, there's a lot of material out there now of people who are traveling along this journey, and lots of good examples and case studies that we can learn from.
Brilliant. Krzysztof, do you have anything additional, maybe along the lines of the business metrics, or do you see any conflict in metrics?
I think like the evaluation is one thing really around those systems, and I think what we have not yet seen really is because the systems that we are building right now with LLMs are still relatively simple. And if you look at machine learning as a discipline, we were like operating much more complex systems with like, automated decision making. And if you are like working in this environment, I think that soon organizations will start to learn this, is that if you will be using business metrics for your particular use case, then the question is how you actually build all of the processes around it. And I think a few people mention it, like for example, kill switches, yeah? So I was operating a system for bot detection, and if there was a spike with like bot activity or like no bot activity, is it good or is it bad? Like it's not obvious, so you need to have like a built-in process around collecting data, figuring out like what actually happened in the real world, and then applying it. And if like spikes in those activities are actually harmful or not harmful, but like you're causing like issues at your business, there's I prefer like a different term that was used several times. Like people who were using kill switches, I prefer graceful degradation. So you are more designing the system around like a business metrics to then gracefully degrade like services, disable part of the system to actually still operate. And in the worst case, you disable the AI and move into the more manual work in order to operate correctly. So that's like one of the angles where those business metrics should be used. The same about releases associated with that. If you will have like a complex AI system, and we were doing this for years in ML, deploying those systems to production is an art on its own. So you have like methods like A/B testing, champion challenger, where you are testing how like different models behave in the production before going like all in on them. So I think like this is not only about collection of those metrics, but actually building the whole processes around like how you will be operating it, especially with agents. Like the more agency they will have, the more robust, like connection to those metrics and control over that you will need to implement.
Thanks, Krzysztof. And actually, that holistic approach and additional checks that are required leads us into the next question. So, agentic systems, they do introduce new challenges. I'll start with yourself, Krzysztof, in this one. What have you observed in terms of both business and technology challenges with this new technology?
So I think like the shiny thing, a problem with actually people trying to try out technology, not solve the actual issues. It's one of those. But there's like a whole layer of challenges that we see across the organizations. So Ashley was saying about organizations who don't have governance, but the organizations that have like governance in place typically are like constructed around saying no. And in order to build out like innovation, those functions have to work, yes, but you need to do A, B, C to actually innovate. So that's one thing. Infrastructure, it's actually interesting because when we started to plug in agents to actual systems, we learned that like, you can have even SharePoint configured in a way that does not allow us to access the data properly. We learned that some of the systems may have like a licensing problems that will actually prevent you to connect them. So there's like an infrastructure. Then you have like a data, and like we had like several use cases where we had like a situation that problems seemed to be like feasible to solve, but when we analyzed the data collection was broken. So it was done through questionnaires, and those questionnaires were not collecting like the right information. Talent, like it's another like challenge. So we are trying to build it internally, and I think we even like for Kainos Assist, yeah, like it's something that we are layering during the path. Recently, we are changing like our training programs around data. We changed it from almost like a data academy, but like all of the academies that we have for early careers were combined into like a training that gives you like a holistic view of engineering with AI first kind of approach. And I'll give you like one final example. Like recently we worked on one of the internal use cases, and one of the product people that was working with us, like she was coming from like a perspective of fear around the AI. When she started to actually look how it works, how it's all coming together. Like I had this discussion yesterday with her, and it was very interesting to hear that like from this fear, she thinks that we are moving more into AI and human partnership. So like the whole, it's a whole transformation for the organizations to leverage like those technologies.
Brian, any challenges that you've come across?
Yeah, lots.
We've got 3 minutes.
So Krzysztof has mentioned infrastructure. That's been a big question for us. Do we run these models on our own hardware? Do we use third-party inference providers? What are the impacts in terms of costs for those choices? Also in terms of privacy, contractual obligations to our customers, passing costs on to our customers. So that's been a lot of discussions around that. Also, as I've already mentioned, engaging with stakeholders and users to understand what their requirements actually are, how they're going to measure value from their perspective. Also, sometimes understanding the tacit sort of knowledge that they have in their heads, how they use terminology, how they use words. So sometimes they'll come back with queries, and I'm going, I don't know what that means. How do I expect an AI? Because they haven't put that down on a piece of paper somewhere. So working through all of that. And then also, I think, and this is a general problem or challenge with AI type projects, is the whole landscape's moving so quickly. Capabilities are changing so fast, and standards are changing fast. So staying on top of that, making sure that you integrate those changes appropriately into the project as it evolves. Those are all things that you're constantly thinking about.
Brilliant. So that leaves us with one final question, which is key takeaways for our audience today. So Brian, any key takeaways that you want to disperse?
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, it seems pretty clear that the demand for agentic systems is going to continue to grow. Their capabilities are increasing all the time, very rapidly. We're looking at these, agents that can undertake what they sometimes call long horizon tasks, where they can go maybe work for hours at a time on a problem. That makes them potentially very powerful. It also brings challenges in terms of, as I say, the cost attached with that, and also verifying what they're doing, evaluating what they're doing becomes increasingly difficult as they become more autonomous. So I think for any company that's looking at this area, I think start now rather than waiting to see how it pans out. There are a lot of skills and questions to be answered to enable us, I think, for other companies to deliver those projects. So the sooner you get started, the better, and focus on smaller, narrowly scoped problems that can be delivered in a sort of really short time frame, so you can then build on to more ambitious projects down the line.
Great, Browne. And Krzysztof, any closing thoughts?
I think like I have like quite similar thoughts about like the process, but it's really if you have like a good governance, enable your people to innovate, take them on the journey, train them, and start like with simple cases and grow like into like more complex. That's like a good like a pattern to start like adopting, and this is absolutely the moment to do it. Like workflows and like right like with like some minimal like decision points. It's absolutely doable straight away.
That's great. Thank you so much to Browne and Krzysztof. Great to get your insights, your honesty, and your expertise as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.